Hey guys, this is Tripped Over, but today you can call me Marshall Mathers. Now we're going to be talking about Dark Souls 3 and the Dark Souls lore that accompany it. Now, the beauty with Dark Souls games is that it has beautiful, intricate, artful lore crafted throughout the story, but it's not given to you. To find what truly the game is about, what everything is about, and why you're doing what you're doing in this game, you have to go through brutal, horrific regions where you fight creatures even worse than the game's main plotline. But, to save you that trouble, that's why I'm here, to fill you in. Now, Dark Souls games began long ago, even before there was humanity, monsters, and even light, in an age where dragons ruled the world. These dragons were godlike, immortal beasts, which could not be killed due to their stone scales, which made them invincible. The dragons had lived in large, massive stone arch trees that extended so high into the heavens they cannot be perceived with the eye. But after several years later of the dragon's tyranny over the land, it would be later ended by the Age of Fire. Now, the Age of Fire begins when the Great Flame, the First Flame, comes into the depths of the world, containing the Great Souls that will give whoever possesses them godlike powers. The souls of the lords were founded by Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, Nito, the first of the dead, and the witches of Zilla, and the fugitive pygmy, the first ancestor of humanity. They had gained the Dark Souls, and thus gained godlike stature, and together they took their newfound power and waged war against the tyrant dragons. The true battle had begun when Gwyn harnessed the power of lightning to destroy the dragon's invincible scales, ridding the beast of their defenses. The witches of Zilla and her daughters of chaos then unleashed giant firestorms to destroy the arch trees, and Nito had caused a miasma of disease on his enemies, and thus this is when a traitor dragon named Seath the Scaleless had betrayed his own kind, sealing the fate and destruction of the everlasting dragons. Now destroying the dragons brought an age of fire and light and prosperity for humanity. But as time went by, the light of the first flame had begun to fade, along with the powers of the souls of the Lord. Now in order to keep the age of fire from plummeting into the age of darkness, the Witch of Azilla attempted to use her powers to create a new flame, but this folly had caused her and her daughters to transform into hideous monsters and spread corruption and demons across the land. And then, in a last-ditch effort, Gwyn had sacrificed himself to fuel the first flame, creating the undead curse and corrupting his army of loyal knights. Now this is when Dark Souls 1 begin, when the chosen undead kills all the lords and chooses to link or unlink the flame. Though the souls of lords weakened, the Dark Souls held by the fugitive pygmy became more powerful. The pygmy thus split the Dark Souls into pieces. The pygmy then split the Dark Souls into several pieces, creating humanity, with each human holding a small portion of the Dark Souls until they lose it and become hollow. With the world corrupted, humans who have lost their humanity and become hollow are sent to the asylum to await the end of the world. Now this is where the chosen undead, or the player, begins his or her journey. As the chosen undead, you travel to the land of Lordaeon, with the goal of linking the fire, as Lord Gwyn had, extending the Age of Fire, and undoing the undead curse. Now to do this, the chosen undead travels to the city of Anlordo to gain possession of an artifact called the Lord Vessel. Once obtained, you must gather the souls of lords held by the corrupted witches of Zilla, Seath the Scaleless, Nito the First of the Dead, and the 4 kings of New Lundo, who possess the shards of Gwyn's soul of lords. And, After you have defeated the last of the old gods, the undead meets a primordial serpent named Darkstalker Keith. Keith reveals the putative pygmy, the first human, was the owner of the Dark Souls, and planned to wait for the Age of Fire, the age ruled by the gods, to wither and fade. Now when this happens, the humans could usher in an age of darkness, but the rise of humans was delayed by Gwyn, altering the natural course and cycle of the world. From this point, the chosen undead faces Gwyn, and upon his defeat is given a choice: following Gwyn's footsteps in Link the Fire, prolonging the Age of Fire, or ushering a new age of dark, becoming the Dark Lord of that time. Now, the course of the first game does not alter the second one, so it really doesn't matter, because either way, the world is destined to continue the cycle of light overcoming dark, then back again. Now, hundreds of years after the events of the first Dark Souls, the kingdom of Dralik was founded by King Vendrick on the bones of the former land's inhabitants. Vendrick and his brother Eldi conquered the kingdom with dragon riders and countless warriors, but after years of prosperous rule, Drandrik was overcome with the curse of the undead. King Vendrick did everything he could to stop the plague from spreading, but in the end, darkness always rises, for light to come back into place. So thus he sent his accursed subjects to faraway lands, and locking them up in a prison called the Last Bastille. He also sent his knight to pursue her to destroy every undead creature, but the king's obsession with ridding himself and the kingdom of the curse didn't end there, and his fear led to some misguided decisions and disastrous events. This was when King Vendrick's queen, Nastra, convinces the ruler that he needed the powers of great souls to starve off the undead curse. So he crosses the nearby sea and attacks the land of giants. Vendrick's forces are driven back to Gendrick, and his kingdom was invaded by massive giants for generations, until the giants were finally defeated. But, after some point in time, the king discovers that his queen wanted access to the Throne of Want, which housed the First Flame and a Great Soul, so he fled to Dendrick's undead crypt to keep his king's ring, the key to the throne, from her. Unable to pursue her goal herself, Nashandra sends a chosen undead to unlock the path to the Throne of Want, but after discovering her true intent, the chosen undead confronts and defeats her at the throne, and once again is able to choose whether to link the flame or leave the first flame to be absorbed by the dark. Now, while Vendrick waged war on giants, his brother Eldi worked on the secluded manor to attempt to discover the source of the undead curse through experimenting on various creatures, thus creating the king's dragon riders that he rode into battle. Now, Aldea and his experiments created the Emerald Herald, your guide and stat leveler throughout the game. Now, it is also theorized that Aldea may have attempted to change himself into the form of an ancient dragon, but it turns out he messed up and changed into a monstrosity instead. Now, the question is, what connects these two games to the third one? Throughout the whole Dark Souls games, the idea of reincarnation is constantly introduced. For instance, in the Age of Dark Souls, the flame had been reignited and the ancient souls had been reborn into new bodies. The souls of lords still exist, but they are held by new beings that give notes to the lord of the original Dark Souls. For instance, the Dark Two Soul bosses, the Rotten, Old Iron King, Lost Sinner, and the Duke, Dear Phaja, all drop great souls that coincide with Dark Souls bosses Nito, Gwyn, the Witch of Azaya, and Seath the Scaleless. Now with Dark Souls 3, the question is, how will they be integrating these souls into the new game for new monstrous bosses? Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Good night.